Hi there everyone, my name is Jack Clough and I work at the University of East London, and I'm delighted to share with you today and talk about Eyes on the Bog, which is the IUCN UK peatland programme's new long-term monitoring network initiative for UK peatlands. So what is Eyes on the Bog? Eyes on the Bog is a citizen science monitoring initiative for peatlands in the UK, and the idea is that it provides a methodology that's scientifically robust, but also repeatable, low-tech, and appropriate to monitor peatland change over the long term. Once it's set up, data can be easily and sustainably collected by volunteers, citizen scientists or staff, and the overall vision is to create a network of directly comparable sites with open data sharing, which will be delivered through the Peat Data Hub, which is something Gabby's going to talk to you about just after this talk. So why do we need Eyes on the Bog? Obviously in the UK there is a vast amount of monitoring that's existing and ongoing, but this can be complex and costly. We would love every site to have a greenhouse gas monitoring network or a network of waterloggers, but this isn't always practical or cost effective. And also different sites typically monitor different aspects of peatlands using different methods, so comparing data can be challenging. And also basic information, it's incredibly valuable, but it can often be overlooked for the need to sort of take a more scientific approach. So we think we can get the best of both worlds and use the Eyes on the Bog methodology to give us this UK-wide data set. But ultimately, we want to really foster wider public engagement with peatlands. We all know how brilliant they are, but getting that across to the wider public is really valuable. And as many people who are probably on the call at the moment know, civic engagement and citizen science is really valuable for peatlands, so we really want to push this as a way forward. So a very brief background theory to Eyes on the Bog. As we all know, healthy peatlands are wonderful places. They have a wide range of niches and microtopography that supply different species with a home, and this is all linked to water. So unfortunately, when we have drainage, there are wide-ranging problems that occur. We all know the big one is carbon loss. Also, the lovely microtopography we have originally has changed. It's, usually becomes simpler and the species composition changes. But also there's things like actual land loss. We have subsidence. And all of these things are usually monitored in different ways. If we have a flux tower that tells us about the carbon loss, but might miss the water table. If we're looking at water table, we might actually miss the vegetation change. And taking all of these aspects as a whole is really important for the overall picture of peatland ecology. Also, citizen science projects can be really useful. For example, we've all heard of the Great Fen posts at Home Fen, and these were basically installed by some, admittedly, the landowners who were going to do the drainage, but they were interested in how this would affect the land. So they installed this post prior to drainage in the 1850s, and now it provides indisputable evidence of peat loss. The cap at the top of the photo here is now 4 meters per hour of the peat surface below. So that's a huge amount of peat loss. Similarly, even in scientific research, features such as this bridge are often used as reference markers for peat surface change. They weren't intended for that purpose, but they're the best thing they have. So emulating this approach was something we like to achieve in Eyes on the Bog. But firstly, where is Eyes on the Bog appropriate? Any peat bogs would be brilliant sites, so lowland raised bogs, blanket bogs, and also small sedge fens are appropriate sites. And it's really important that we achieve different Eyes on the Bog sites at different stages in a site's trajectory. So we'd like to see Eyes on the Bog sites on damaged sites, really good condition sites, sites that are maybe about to be restored, even potentially ex-peat extraction sites, and all of them will provide really valuable data about the overall sort of trajectory of our peatlands in the UK. Over the long term, we'd like to know whether they're improving or they're getting worse, or whether individual monitoring actions are better than one or another. So, who can be involved in Eyes on the Bog? Well, obviously any existing projects that are ongoing on our peatlands are very well placed to take up Eyes on the Bog monitoring. They'll have a network of volunteers and interested people who they can get involved. But also if there are any individuals or independent parties who'd be keen to get involved in Eyes on the Bog, then we really like to direct them to the IUCN Peatland Programmes projects map. Here they can find details of nearby projects who will then be able to put them in touch with Eyes on the Bog monitoring sites and methods. And more recently, Eyes on the Bog sites have been added to this projects map. So as we have more and more sites getting involved, they'll be logged here so people can find them. So what is the Eyes on the Bog methodology? So first of all, we have 5 things we'd like you to use. And the first of which is a totemic marker. So over here, and this is just a visual cue to people who visit your site that it is an Eyes on the Bog monitoring site. And this could be constructed by a local artist, or perhaps you could have a competition to design it with your volunteers or citizen scientists. And this would be a really excellent way of gaining interest in our Eyes on the Bog. So in terms of the 4 actual monitoring pieces of equipment or methods you'd need to use, we have surface level markers, which are shown here. And these act like the home fen posts. So they'll let us know whether a peatland is accumulating peat or losing peat. We also have rust rods, which give us a very general idea of the hydrology of a peatland site. We have a von Post test, which gives us an idea of peat condition, lets us see how decomposed the peat is, and can be used for improving our understanding of its current trajectory on the restoration pathway. And we also have a whole suite of photography. So this could be regular photography with a camera or smartphone, stereo photography as a technique, or virtual reality imagery if you have a VR camera available. And we believe that all this data will be really useful, and to get the full effect of Eyes on the Bog monitoring, we'd like each site to have a minimum of one of the 4 methods shown above. And we believe that meaningful data can be gathered at a monitoring frequency of 1 year or less, so there won't be too much of a monitoring burden. In terms of the kit itself, you have to construct a lot of it yourself, but we've designed this to be done with very cheap and widely available items. It all hinges around constructing steel threaded rods. We'd really urge you to buy zinc plated steel rods rather than stainless steel, as stainless steel will cause you problems later on. Don't make our mistakes. We tried it in an earlier project and it didn't work. So zinc plated steel. And all the other metalwork is really widely available. And indicative costs, we think this would be about £70 to £80 if you have some basic equipment, such as an angle grinder or a Dremel already available. So, how do we make our surface level markers? First of all, we need to create the surface level rod assembly. So this is the part that sits at the top and sits flush with the surface of the peat bog. And this basically involves creating a marker on the right using materials on the left, and you need to coat it in blue oxide paint. This is really important as it's chemically inert and prevents damage to the peatland. And obviously you want to make these ahead of time, so I can visit UEL making these for a couple of current projects. You can make, you want to make the top assembly, and you also want to make some 1 meter extension rods, leaving space on the ends to attach connectors. These will be really important if your peatland is over a metre deep, because you need to anchor these directly into the surface below rather than just in the peat. So when you install your surface level markers, all the kit will easily fit into a day sack, so you don't have to carry huge amounts of things around. And you essentially take a peat depth, note this down. You then need to create an appropriate length of for your surface level marker, so that the top washer is flush with the vegetation surface. And you really need to make sure this is anchored directly into the ground, into the substrate beneath. But full instructions are in the Eyes on the Bog manual, which we'll provide a link to at the end. It's also really important that the depth is recorded in a robust fashion, so for monitoring later on. And we're suggesting this can be achieved by attaching some washers, depth washers, to your surface level rods. And again, instructions are in the manual. But most importantly, once you install your surface level marker, you need to record the date, the unique ID, the national grid reference, all that long, for its location, the peat depth, and other information such as, did you attach depth washers, have you taken any photos, and do you have any comments? Again, when you come to monitor them, so you're doing this in a few years or a year later, if there's positive change, your peat surface marker over here might be buried. You'd have to locate this with perhaps a metal detector, or a compass bearing in a distance. But approaching it, we'd really suggest using snowshoes to prevent damage to your site. You don't want to monitor yourself, the impact you yourself have had in the future. But here you'd record a positive change, so the depth of the washer to the surface. On the left, you can see it's gained about 10 centimetres. However, you can also have a negative change. So if your surface is subsiding, the washer will be proud of the surface. And here you will have to measure the gap between the surface and the washer. So that's a negative change, indicating loss. Water table behaviour. So these are our rust rods, quite easy to construct, as shown in the picture below. Again, you need to paint them blue with an oxide paint. This can lead to a pretty sort of surreal scene as you're drying them at your home base or your office. And the difference here is you need to grind a shiny face on your threaded rod using an angle grinder or a file or a Dremel. And this shiny face is basically done to enable us to see where the rust line is effectively. So coming to install these, all the kit again fits in a day sack, which is really helpful. And you need to take a peat depth, as we mentioned before. Ideally, these are only 1 metre long, so if you've got more than 1 metre of peat depth, you can just install it flush to the surface and you don't have to do anything else. If it's shallow peat, you may have to cut your rust rod to size and again just insert it. Obviously, cutting like you would with the surface level markers, you probably need a bit of PPE, so gloves and eye protection for your volunteers, but it's quite straightforward. And again, you need to record the Eyes on the Bog monitoring information. So for example, I've taken this at Fulbourn Fen, where we've made a series of videos to show you how to do this. But you need to take unique IDs, a date, national grid reference, the rust line depth. Obviously on installation, this isn't applicable. A von Post score, which we'll talk about in a moment, whether you've taken any photos and any comments. When you come to monitor, again, you need to locate your rust rod. You should then take it out of the ground, marking the original hole where you've taken it from. And we're suggesting that you reveal the rust line by pouring water on, using your paintbrush to remove the peat, and then you can record your rust line depth. So on the right, you'll see here, I've just quickly put a line of rust in for you. And you record the depth from the top of your washer to the base of the rust line. And this basically is because the top part that's aerated will rust, and the shiny line underneath is where the water table will sit. So this is kind of an idea of where your average water table is. And on the right, the far right, we have an example of a rust rod, sort of in real life. And again, you want to record all the information you need for the Peat Data Hub. And if you're coming back, this is, again, it's a good idea to say how many measurements it's had, that kind of thing. And with each rust rod, we really encourage a von Post test for peat condition. This is a bit of a messy one, but you essentially take a lump of peat from about wrist depth, get a decent sized lump, and then you have to squish it between your hand and make some judgments based on the von Post test table. If your site is accumulating peat, over time you expect the degree of humidification to be getting a lower score, so H1, H2, H3. If your site's getting worse, you might see the von Post test over time going towards more decomposed end of the scale, so H10, H9, H8, for example. Finally, photography is really important. You can do fixed point photography, so this will allow you to see vegetation change over time. You can achieve this with a VR camera, if you have one, for your volunteers, or just simply through everyday cameras or smartphones. They can still achieve really useful photos. Geotag photography is also really good. You can use this to capture individual features of interest, so species, for example. These are taken on my phone at the Munster Peatlands in Caithness. And you can use these to identify Sphagnum fuscum, Drosera anglica, and Sphagnum magellanicum. So I hope this all sounds really interesting. We'd really love you to all be involved. We'd love as many products as possible to get involved as well. For more information, we've got some introductory leaflets and a much larger detailed manual on all the methods mentioned already. And you can find these on the ICN UK Peatland programme. You can also contact me, and I'll be very happy to take questions at the end of the talk. Now it's over to Gabby to tell you all about the Peat Data Hub and how any data gathered through Eyes on the Bog can be shared and effectively used by interested people. Thanks very much.
Hello, I'm Gabriela Lopez Gonzalez. I work at the University of Leeds as the coordinator of Water at Leeds and an interdisciplinary research center. I'm an eco-informatician overseeing the development of Peat Data Hub and collaborative partnerships. In this presentation, I will talk about the collaboration between Eyes on the Bog and Peat Data Hub. Peat Data Hub was launched in 2016 at the University of Leeds during a workshop that brought together scientists working on peatland sites in North America, South America, Asia, Europe, and Africa. The agreed aims of Peat Data Hub are to foster collaboration by providing a platform for storing and managing data from short and long-term peatland studies. Another aim is to answer global-scale research questions related to peatland processes and environmental change that can only be answered by combining datasets. And we also want to use the research outputs for evidence management practice and policy, and to secure funding for peatland monitoring and research. The public side of the database hosts a directory of peatland researchers and research projects, a compilation of resources like software code and data packages, and showcases publications, including policy briefs from the peatland community. Peat Data Hub resources list features data packages like PeatMap, a GIS shapefile dataset that shows a distribution of peatlands that covers the entire world. Different tools, like a training module designed for the public to understand how peatlands are formed, how they are managed, and benefits they provide, can also be found on our public side. At the core of Peat Data Hub is the database, the Peat Data Hub database. From a technical point of view, Peat Data Hub is a cloud-based application that uses a SQL database to store data in a standardized format. The application is secured. Access to different features and functionality is allocated on a user-by-user case. The modular design of the database enables the system to easily grow and adapt to different data collection needs. The key features of the Peat Data Hub are: it can be accessed online, although registration is required. Peatland site metadata, water table data, and ice on the bog field data can be recorded in a standardized format. It's also important to point out that users that manage their data using Peat Data Hub have full control of their data and can decide how to share it. Before we continue, I invite you to participate in the poll and answer the question: how do you share your peatland data? The options are a supplementary material in a journal, upon personal request, in a repository, or rather not share. We will look at the answers at the end of the presentation. The first release of Peat Data Hub was designed to manage metadata from monitoring sites and water table data collected from wells. The well data would be uploaded to the database in a standardized format. Photographs and ancillary information associated with sites and wells can also be uploaded. The new release of Peat Data Hub includes a module for recording eye on the box monitoring sites. All registered users have access to a list of peatland sites and their metadata. The data flow is designed to reflect what happens in the field. A given site can potentially have well data from one team and information from multiple ROS roads and surface level markers following the ice on the bog approach. For each ice on the bog monitoring site, the geographic information is recorded, and recordings of individual roads and surface level markers are stored against the site. Together with the site information, the database records the organization responsible for the site setup. The person responsible for the data upload is then assigned a role as a database manager. This person can decide if the data from the ice on the bog can be made publicly available. The data manager is responsible for the quality of the data and is someone to be contacted if any issues with the data are noted or if there are specific data requests in the future. Surface level marker and ROS road information recorded in the field needs to be entered manually into the database. The screen shows an example of how to add ROS road information to the database. After each new field measurement is entered, the changes in trend are calculated automatically. Post test values are recorded together with ROS road values. The photo module allows for the upload of standard photo formats, geotagged photos, and 360 photos, and to record detailed information of the photo taken. The user can also add predetermined tags or create new tags to photos uploaded, which are useful information when looking for something specific. As a recap, this is an overall view of the information associated with an ice on the bog monitoring site. Geographical and admin information of the site can be viewed and edited in the Details tab. ROS roads measurements and surface level markers are managed in the tabs with those names. Photos and ancillary information can be added using the upload wizards in each section. A final feature that I'll be talking about is the advanced search. This feature allows you to find information from sites based on their location, vegetation type, days of installation. In addition, you can specify the type of information you're looking for: ROS roads, surface level markers, or photos. For data outputs, the results can be downloaded as CSV or Excel files. The advanced search also allows photos to be downloaded. The partnership between Peat Data Hub and Ice on the Bog team from IUCN has resulted in implementation of new features that will facilitate the management of data collected in the field, which will be analyzed to inform management interventions and research the functioning of peatlands. The success of the collaboration is based on a joint interest in peatland research, understanding of the challenges and benefits of data sharing, and relying on each other's strengths, IUCN methodological expertise, and the University of Leeds ecoinformatics experience. So what's next? We invite you to get involved, set up an Eyes on the Bog site, upload and share your data, and join Peat Data Hub. Before we start the Q&A section, Jack and I would like to know if you would like to set up an Eye on the Bog site. Thank you. For more information, go to our website or contact me.
Hi there everyone, it's Jack, and we just wanted to show a live view of the photos. So here's a standard image which lets you take a feature, but we've also built in 360 viewing of images, which allows you to view the wider context of your site. You can pan around, zoom in, and also download the image for viewing in a 3D viewing Google Cardboard or VR kit. Okay. Hi there everyone.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Richard Lindsay from University of East London. I'm going to be moderating the Q&A session. So thank you very much, Jack and Gabby. Before I go any further, I'd just like to pay tribute to the work that Gabby and Mark have been doing at Leeds in tailoring the Peat Data Hub to fit with the Eyes on the Bog program. They've been extremely open and flexible in terms of how they do that. So I'd just like to pass on my thanks about that. Right, we have a number of questions. I guess the first thing that I'd like to emphasize is that the Eyes on the Bog program does not claim to be a sophisticated recording process. If you remember the image of the home fen post that Jack showed, I mean, this is basically what the Eyes on the Bog program is. The home fen post is also a long-term monitoring process. So again, the Eyes on the Bog system is really designed to give us the longer-term view of what's going on. So bearing that in mind, let's have a look at some of the questions. With the top of the poll question at the moment is, with all the great work to standardize restoration monitoring and definition of site condition, yesterday's call for UK-wide rollout of LAMTRA training for restoration practitioners prompts me to ask if this is the time for a national training programme for all NGO, university and agency staff in recognising site condition and understanding potential impacts. Yeah, that's quite a big question. It goes well beyond the Eyes on the Bog approach. But Jack, perhaps you'd like to comment on that thought?
Yeah, so yeah, definitely a standardized way of monitoring is what the Eyes on the Bog is trying to achieve at a sort of basic level. But yeah, more broadly, I'm sure all peatland sites could very much benefit from standardized training and protocols being adopted. I'm not sure who would deliver that, but it would be an excellent thing to achieve.
Right, but as part of your role as the Eyes on the Bog champion, you are committed to at least a degree of provision of training, some of it virtual and some of it actually in the field if required. Yes?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm able to give some time and dedicate that to people if they would like to set up an Eyes on the Bog site or have any questions about setting up the site themselves. So yeah, the best way is to sort of contact me or contact the ICN through the Eyes on the Bog homepage, and then we can get in touch and sort of provide some training for you.
Thanks very much, Jack. A question for Gabby. Is the metadata description followed by any standardized protocol?
Where is that? It's mainly based on what the needs of the project. So we're not using a standardized schema. That's the question. Right. Yeah. So we're creating our own standards based on what we need.
Right, but to some extent, the standards that you're using, to what extent do they model or mirror the standards on the Forest Data Hub that is also managed at Leeds?
So they're very similar. So we try to follow the same approach. But what we've been doing is that everything that every item in the database is accompanied by the description. So if there's always opportunities to be more specific about what something means or to add a new description if needed.
Okay, thanks, Gabby. Jack, a relatively simple technical question. The answer may not be simple. How many eyes per acre would you install on a small raised bog? I guess partly depends what you mean by small raised bog, but what sort of distribution of points? Actually, there was another question about installing on blanket bog landscapes as well. So maybe you could give us a picture of how many points, what with a minimum, how dense might you need to go?
Yeah.
Over to you, Jack.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Richard. I think we've deliberately tried not to put too much of a hard minimum, apart from one feature per site to kind of encourage uptake. It would depend on the size of the peatland you're trying to monitor. If it's a loaded raised bog, I would maybe have a transect going from the edge of the bog system through to the crown. That could provide quite interesting information. And equally, a blanket bog, if it's a very large area, you might want to focus on sort of features of interest. But really, it's as many as you feel you're able to monitor and deliver through your volunteer network.
Great, thanks, Jack. Yes, again, it's worth pointing out that in terms of home fen, there is only one, well, actually there are two home fen posts for the entire site, but it's still giving us a very clear story about what's happening there. We've got a question that looks at the vegetation and microtopography. Eyes on the Bog manual is really specific about surface level, water table depth, and peat characteristics, but much more vague about measuring vegetation type and microtopography. It basically just mentions using photography and VR. Can we expand on this? What are our thoughts on the capacity of Eyes on the Bog to be recording vegetation and microtopography usefully?
Yeah, so again, Eyes on the Bog is sort of the minimum starting point we'd really like everyone to use. So yeah, certainly anything you can add that is extra added value, that would be fantastic. Richard and I have developed a a couple of sort of microtope and nanotope assessment sheets, which we can also distribute if people would like to use them. We've been trialing these in Wales with the project. But yeah, basically, it's a starting point. I think the eyes on the bog, and anything you already want would be really beneficial to add in to that method.
There's a technical question from Alistair Lockett. I know you'll be able to cover this, Jack. How do you take your 360 images?
Okay, so we have a Ricoh Theta camera, a Z1, so I've actually got it here. They're not very expensive, about £200–300, and it can take an image in 3 seconds, so you can get rapid data capture in the field.
Thanks, Jack. Gabby, I'm just looking for any more questions for you.
That's okay.
Right, I'll just release that one. Okay, Gabby, how many UK researchers and research projects are currently using Peat Data Hub?
At the moment, we're starting with the University of Leeds and Eyes on the Bog partnership. But we have a list of about 10 potential external partners around the world. So the difficulty with these projects is to have the time to upload the data. So now, fortunately, we have a bit of funding to hire somebody to do that. So something to take into account. So it's important to go to the field and take the measurements, but we also have to think like large-scale projects that if the data is going to be useful, it needs to be stored in somewhere, and that takes time and money and training. So we hope that by starting this partnership, we're going to be able to say this is something useful and get more funding to keep going and to keep making sure the data is in a good place and can be useful.
Thanks, Gabby. Just to be clear, the Peat Data Hub existed before we started discussing the addition of Eyes on the Bog. So the data that already existed in the Peat Data Hub, that was these 10 partners that you mentioned?
Yes, so that's before, yeah.
Right, plus
that's going to come from it.
Yeah, I see. Okay. Jack, a question about the rust rods, and if you put the rust rod in a very wet site, does that not have a major influence on rusting?
Yes, I suppose it would. If it's very, very wet, you'd hopefully not see as much rusting as you would if because it's completely anaerobic. We've not tried it in an area close to a bog pool yet, for example, so that would be really interesting for other people to capture that data and feed it back to us. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if that had any impact.
I think the point is that the purpose of the rust rod is to show where the water table never falls to, because the ground face of the rod below that level will remain bright, non-rusted. So actually, if it's in a very wet site, then probably the majority of your ground face will remain bright.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, equally, if it captures nothing, that's a result in itself. So that'd be valuable.
Yes, presumably it means the water table has stayed right at the surface all the time.
Yeah.
What about location and measurement of the surface level rods in relation to microtopography and also potentially bog breathing? I guess that's you again, Jack.
Yeah.
I'm afraid.
So we currently advise that surface level markers are placed at the peat surface or the bryophyte surface. So if it was placed on a microtopography feature, so a hummock, then it would be really worth capturing that in the notes. And if you had a site with those features, it would be worth applying a number of surface level markers across those features to see if you can detect any difference. As for more breathing, bog breathing, would probably over time, because it's a long period of monitoring, you would sort of even out that influence. If you're accumulating, say over 50 years, you've accumulated 30-40 centimeters on top of your surface level marker. It's clearly accumulating something rather than swelling. But again, that would be really interesting for other people to adopt the method and feedback their results, and we can assess that impact.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Gabby, one for you again. When you say it takes time to load up the data, the Peat Data Hub is ready to launch, and the idea is for projects to load their own data going forward?
Yes, so at the moment we have a backlog of data, like historical data that needs to be uploaded. But the idea is that every individual researcher, everybody who wants to learn how to use it can learn. We can have some training, and then researchers can, or citizen science can upload their own data. So it's like you set up a site like Eyes of the Bog, same day come back to the office and upload your data. So you make sure that it's stored in a safe place instead of in a piece of paper lying around for months. So that will be the idea.
All right. Thanks, Gabby. Question, could I look up where other people have placed markers already? Jack?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yeah, so you'll be able to see all the publicly available data. So when you create a site on the Peat Data Hub, you can say whether you want the data viewable or not. So you can make it not private while you're uploading the data, but you're really pushing for open access to share. You should be able to see individual sites and then see individual rust rods or surface level markers associated with them.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Okay, question to both of you, I guess. Gabby first, then maybe Jack. How can we roll out the Eyes on the Bog method on a larger scale across the UK?
That's an interesting question. I think, well, this is it, isn't it? Like trying to roll it out, making it, publicizing it. I guess it will be two parts. The part that with Jack look on the hands-on, and me trying to make sure that complementing that part of the field with training for people to learn how to use the Eyes on the Bog module from Peat Data Hub. And tomorrow we're having both, we're having stands. So whoever wants to learn how to use both the field method and the database can come and visit us.
Excellent, thanks, Gabby. Jack, quick final thought on that?
Yeah, so we're hoping to publicise Eyes on the Bog as widely as possible, and we're going to we've done a very sort of quick lockdown version of the videos we're going to do, which will be on the exhibitor stand, so you can come and see that later. But ultimately it's sharing the news, providing lots of training, and then showcasing the results that we'll get from the Eyes on the Bog methodology that we hope will drive uptake.
And then after COVID, the idea is, I think, that we release you out into the nation to go and be promoting it. Yes?
Yeah. I'll be driving around, giving citizen science groups some education and helping them set up sites. So yeah, it'll be really exciting when we're allowed back out again.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for your really interesting questions, for following the developments on Eyes on the Bog. Thank you, Jack and Gabby, for explaining everything so well. I do urge people to be looking at what's on offer tomorrow in relation to Eyes on the Bog. Yeah, hopefully in due course, we're going to have lots of home fen posts scattered right across the country, because Stone Fen Post is actually almost unique in the world. So let's have a lot more unique examples, if that isn't an oxymoron. So thank you very much, everybody.